Good evening. Welcome to Unity Church of the Hills. We're glad you're here. You know, in this work that I've been in for about 30 years, I've bumped into some wonderful folks, some amazing teachers and authors and people in the movement. And along comes Dr. Joe into my life about a year and a half ago through his second book, and the one that really jumped out and grabbed me. And we began to work with that book here on a regular basis and teach it as best we could. And then we worked it out for Dr. Joe to be here through the auspices of Insight Events in June. And I had a feeling that he would be, as he presented himself on What the Bleep and in his work. But it's been a great pleasure to find that is really absolutely the case. Dr. Joe Dispenza is a great gift to all of us, and he is so because he sees the great gift, the geniuses that we all are, and he has a tremendous ability to bring that out. So please welcome to our stage tonight, Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Thank you. I want you to turn to the person next to you. I want you to look them in the eye. I'd like you to introduce yourself as a genius. Let's begin. Now, before we begin, I have a few questions for you. How many people in this audience actually believe in the idea that the way you think has some effect on your life, that your thoughts create your reality? How many people believe that? You do, yes? So I have another question for you. How many people actually woke up this morning and consciously created a future? You know, the biggest reason why people don't do it is because you don't believe it's true. You see, if you knew that your thoughts created your destiny, if you knew that on a gut level, would you ever miss a day? Come on. And would you ever let any thought slip by your awareness that you didn't want to experience? So you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. Out of those 60 to 70,000 thoughts that you think in one day, 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. So then the same thoughts will always lead to the same choices. The same choices will always create the same behaviors. The same behaviors will produce the same experiences, and the same experiences will create the same emotions, and those same familiar feelings and emotions will drive the same exact thoughts. And your biology, your neurocircuitry, your chemistry, your hormones, your physiology, and your genetic expression will be always equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. And so then, your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. And your personality is made up of how you think, how you act, and how you feel. So the present personality who's sitting here today has created the present personal reality called your life. So would you agree then that if you wanted to create a new personal reality, then you'd have to start thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it? Yes? And you'd have to start noticing those unconscious habits and behaviors that lead to the same experiences, that create the same emotions, that reaffirm the same identity, and decide if you want to act and choose in the same way. And then you'd have to look at those emotions that you've memorized, that have become part of your personality, and decide if you want to bring those emotions into your future. You see, most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it's impossible. We literally have to become someone else. So then, if you keep thinking the same way every single day and making the same choices that lead to the same behaviors, there's a principle in neuroscience. And that principle is nerve cells that fire together wire together. So as you repeat the same thoughts, choices, behaviors, and experiences, you're forcing your brain to fire in the same sequences, in the same patterns, in the same combinations every day. And as long as you make your brain work the same way every day, you're reproducing the same level of mind. And you begin to hardwire your brain into a very finite signature. And that finite signature is like the box of the brain. So then, thinking outside the box then would mean that you would begin to make your brain fire in new sequences, in new patterns, in new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind, because mind is the brain in action. So the one ingredient that allows you to begin the process is information, is knowledge. Because every time you learn something new, you make a new connection in your brain. That's what learning is. Learning is forging new synaptic connections. Remembering is maintaining and sustaining those connections. So then, the Nobel Prize laureate Kandel in the year 2000 found that when people learn just a few bits of information, they doubled the number of connections in a certain part of their brain from about 1,300 connections to 2,600 connections. But if they didn't revisit that information and review it, within hours or days, those circuits literally pruned apart. So then, as you begin to learn vital information about the nature of reality, the new science of possibility, and you begin to wire that information in your brain, and you can repeat it, which, by the way, if you come to the workshop tomorrow, you're going to have to repeat everything that you learn, because you're going to have to wire it in your brain. So that in your weakest moment or your darkest hour, you don't talk yourself out of possibility. So as you learn just a little bit of information, you're adding new stitches into the three-dimensional tapestry of your gray matter. And if you can contemplate and think about what you've learned, you're making your brain fire in new and different ways. And when you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind. So then, new thoughts should lead to new choices. And new choices should lead to new behaviors. And new behaviors should create new experiences. And new experiences should create new emotions. And those new feelings and those new emotions should drive new thoughts. And that's called evolution. So then, does your environment control your thinking, or does your thinking control your environment? Or we could say, does your personal reality create your personality? Or does your personality create your personal reality? So then your brain is organized to reflect everything you know in your life. Your brain is a reflection of your external environment. It's an artifact from the past of all the things you've learned and all the things that you've experienced. It's wired or mapped in your brain. So if you wake up every morning and you get out of bed on the same exact side as you did the day before, and then you shut your alarm clock off with the same finger, and then you slip into your favorite slippers and you shuffle into the bathroom, and you use the toilet like you always do, and then you get up and you walk over to the mirror and you look in the mirror to remember who you are, And then you get in the shower and you wash yourself in the same routine way as you always do. And then you dress yourself and groom yourself to look like everybody expects you to look. And then you go downstairs and you have your breakfast the same as you did the day before, and you drink coffee out of your favorite mug. And then you drive to work in the same routine fashion, in the same route. And then you get to work and you do the things that you can memorize and do so well. And then you see those same people that push the same emotional buttons. You know, those people. And then you hurry up and you go home, and you hurry up and you eat, and you hurry up and check your email, and then you hurry up and watch your favorite television show, and then you hurry up and go to bed so you can hurry up and do it all over again the next day. Now here's my question. Did your brain change at all that day? We could say that you were thinking the same thoughts, performing the same actions, living by the same emotions, but secretly expecting your life to change. Would you agree? So then, as you go to the same place and see the same people and do the exact same thing at the exact same time as you did the day before, we could say that it's your external environment that's turning on different circuits in your brain, causing you to think equal to everything that you know. And as long as you think equal to everything that you know, everything the same, and you told me that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, you keep creating more of the... Poke the person next to you, please. So you're thinking equal to your environment. So we could say then that it's your personal reality that's creating your personality. And it's your environment that's causing you to think and feel equal to everything that you know. So then you would have to agree with me then, to change is to be greater than your environment, to be greater than the conditions in your world, to be greater than the circumstances in your life. And every great person in history knew this, whether it was William Wallace or Mahatma Gandhi or Martin Luther King or Joan of Arc, Madame Curie, Queen Elizabeth I, Abraham Lincoln. They all had a vision. They had a dream. Couldn't see it, couldn't smell it, couldn't taste it, couldn't feel it, but it was alive in their mind. It was so alive in their mind that they began to live as if that future reality was happening in the present moment. So then, can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet? But you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain is literally changed to look like the experience has already happened. Neuroscience now says it's absolutely possible. So can you fall in love with the future potential that exists in the quantum field and emotionally embrace that future reality before it's made manifest? So much so that your body, as the unconscious mind, begins to believe that that future experience is happening to you in the present moment, and you begin to signal new genes in new ways that your body begins to change to look like the experience has happened. Epigenetics says it's possible. So if your brain and body are physically changed to look like the experience has already happened, relax. Because the experience is going to find you. And it's going to come in a way that you least expect. Now, why would it come in a way that you least expect? Because if you can expect it, it's nothing new. It's got to catch you off guard, and it's got to rock your world, and it's got to leave no doubt that what you did inside of you produced some result outside of you. And when you can correlate what you did inside of you that produced some event outside of you, you'll pay attention to what you did and you'll do it again. And when the experience finally shows up and you're caught up in the emotions of the experience, those new emotions then inspire you and drive you to believe that it's possible. And you begin to build a neurological network that convinces you now that somehow you have a hand in your destiny. How many people are with me? So then, if you accept this paradigm, just in the littlest way, then you would have to agree then that the quantum model of reality says that your environment is an extension of your mind. That mind and matter are so intimately related, it's almost impossible to distinguish them apart. So if your environment is an extension of your mind, and you truly change your mind, shouldn't there be evidence in your life? I mean, why else would we do it? Shouldn't there be something happening outside of you because of the change you made inside of you? You with me? Now, when we embrace the concept of change, you know, if you're no longer going to think the same way or act the same way or feel the same way, you're not going to make the same choices that lead to the same behaviors, that create the same experiences, that produce the same emotions, that make you feel like who you are. The moment you begin the process, you step into the river of change. Now here's the old self, and here's the new self, and there's a void between the two. And when people begin the process of change, the moment they're no longer going to think like themselves, the moment they're no longer going to act like themselves, complain or blame or make excuses or feel sorry for themselves or judge other people, and the moment they are going to stop the emotions that keep redefining them, they just put their foot in the river. And now here's the problem. The moment that happens, it begins to feel uncomfortable. It begins to feel unfamiliar. It begins to become unpredictable. And all of a sudden, you're in the unknown. And this is the moment where people define themselves. Because the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. And the moment you begin to inhibit those thoughts, choices, behaviors, experiences, and emotions, the body is craving the payoff, which is the emotion that you've become to define as yourself. And now the body's not getting that familiar feeling, and it starts to send a signal back to your brain, and it says, start tomorrow. You're a loser. It's not going to work. You broke a fingernail. Your day is ruined. And those thoughts are the body as the mind, as you'll learn, trying to unseat you. And if you listen to that voice as if it's true, that voice, that thought will lead to the same choice, which will lead to the same behavior, that will create the same experience, that will produce the same emotion, and you will say, this feels right. No, that feels familiar. Crossing the river of change is the biological, neurological, chemical, hormonal, addictive, genetic death of the old self. It is a literal dying of the old self. And people will say to me, Dr. Joe, yeah, but I can't predict my future. I'm in the river of change. Well, the best way to predict your future when you're in the unknown is to create it. And only when you are in the unknown, when you are in that void, if you can begin to become comfortable with it, that the magic happens. So then, we invest enormous amounts of energy in building an identity that's connected to the old self. And where you place your attention, as you'll learn this weekend, is where you place your energy. So if you keep this facade, this ideal of yourself going for an extended period of time, all for the payoff of the feeling that you define as you. Because when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you wake up and then you go, oh, where's the feeling? Oh, there's guilt. Oh, whoo, whoo. Almost didn't know who I was. All right, now I can think about my problems and all the people that are related to it. Oh, my goodness. We look for that feeling. So then, the moment we begin to draw our energy away from the old self, that is the David and Goliath. That is Gandalf on the bridge looking at the monster. And as you begin to take your attention off the old self, it demands a certain amount of your attention. And now you are beginning to abandon it, and you're taking your energy and bringing it back, and you're driving it to a new future. And that first couple steps into the river is where people have to decide if they want to cross or not. But then, if you're in the river, instead of white-knuckling it through the whole process, wouldn't you agree that it would be a good idea to think about what thoughts you do want to fire and wire in your brain? And could you begin to plan your behaviors and begin to rehearse who you're going to be when you open your eyes and begin to change your brain just by thought alone? To begin to eliminate the environment and the people and things and places and experiences in your world and make the inner world more real than the outer world until your brain begins to change to look like the experience has already occurred. You're going to learn how to do this, and there are people around the world that are doing it, and they're doing the uncommon. And so then, as the body begins to crave the emotion that we become addicted to that defines us, and you are like an addict going through the cravings and the changes, don't you think that you could teach your body emotionally, without the experience, what abundance would feel like ahead of the event? Giving it a sampling of the future. Now, the materialist would say, well, I'm not going to give thanks till my lover shows up. And I'm not going to be in joy till my abundance, finally is in my checking account. That's the old model of reality, of cause and effect. Waiting for something outside of you to change how you feel inside of you. And when that person or that experience changes how you feel differently, and you pay attention to who caused it or what caused it. And that event in and of itself is called a memory. But that's the Newtonian model of reality. Our senses defining reality. But the quantum model of reality is beyond your senses. Which means then, you begin to emotionally embrace the event before it's made manifest. And you can convince your body emotionally that it's already occurred, and those emotions are driving a new set of thoughts. Then you would have to agree with me then. If you do that properly, your brain and body are no longer in the past. They're literally in the future. And if you can give thanks before the event occurred, oh my gosh. We've been hypnotized and conditioned into believing we need a reason for joy. We need a reason for gratitude. That's the old model. But the quantum model says, you give thanks before the event is made manifest, and you convince your body emotionally it's already done. Because what is the emotional signature of gratitude? Well, doesn't it mean it already happened? So if you're giving thanks, you move into a state of gratitude, your body, as the unconscious mind, begins to believe it's already done. And gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. So then if you're combining a clear intention with an elevated emotion, and you're in a new state of being, then you're literally signaling new genes in new ways before the event has occurred. And your body begins to change, as you'll learn this weekend, to look like the experience has occurred. You've already signaled a gene. The body's already in the future. And as a matter of fact, if you combine that model with the quantum model of reality, and you're observing that destiny, your body's going to be drawn to the event. So then, our senses should be the last to experience what our mind has created. And so then the materialist would wait for the event to occur to give thanks. But the quantum mind has already experienced it enough times that when their mind and body are in the future, they have a sense of knowingness. So taking philosophical knowledge, information, and initiating that information into your life to have an experience allows you to begin to experience the truth of that knowledge. And then ultimately, if you can re-experience it enough times, you begin to master it. You go from philosopher to initiate to master. And there are people around the world that are doing the uncommon right now. And we are in an amazing time. This is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And I can tell you from the movie What the Bleep, after it became an overnight sensation, the most common question that I heard over and over and over again was, how do you do it? And why is it so hard to change? Those are two questions I kept hearing over and over again. So then most people wait for crisis or trauma or disease or diagnosis or loss to finally decide to change. We have to be knocked to our knees when we finally say enough. And when we reach that point where we're in crisis, we no longer feel like ourselves, and that's the first time we could actually see ourselves. Because you're beginning to look at it through the eyes of someone else. But my message is, why wait? You know, you can learn and change in a state of pain and suffering, or you can learn and change in a state of joy and inspiration. Which would you choose? Now, the old model of reality that's been steeped in religion is that you have to suffer and you have to go through all the emotions along with it. And then it's time to change. But why not create the life you want in the state that you're in? So, after What the Bleep, we started teaching workshops around the world, not because I ever wanted to do it, but because people kept asking me, what do you do? And how do you do it? And so we taught these workshops for a year. And guess what happened? Nothing. I mean, some people had some changes, but it really wasn't amazing, you know? And I had to think, you know, if I was making a difference or not. And I don't know if I wasn't saying it well, or I just, you know, it wasn't being received. But after about a year, about 9-10 months, all of a sudden we started getting emails from people. And the first line of every email that we get is always the same. The very first line reads exactly the same. It reads, "You're not going to believe this. I actually applied this stuff and it works." And so we started seeing people heal themselves of different conditions, and it became exciting. And then we started to teach these other level workshops because people wanted to know more, and then more levels and more levels. And I never planned on doing any of this, to be honest with you. And we had an event in Colorado, and it was an advanced workshop, and the staff pulled me aside of the hotel, and they asked if I was handing out ecstasy on the breaks, you know. And so that particular event was very emotional for me because I started to witness transformation occur right in our workshop. And people were having a tremendous release of the emotions from the past.